pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Professor Sarah Mbi Eno Anyang. She is the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology of the African Union Commission. Commissioner, thank you for being with us today. I know you are a great advocate for inclusive education, so we are eager to listen to you, Professor. You have the floor.
Trying to unmute. Okay. Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you. You see, I'm always out of breath. I want to recognize the president of Mr. Femin Matoko, the Assistant DG for Priority for Africa. I also want to recognize the presence of my sister, the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Alice Albright of the Global Partnership for Education. She's a valued partner to the African Union Commission, passionate about education in Africa. I also want to recognize the presence of my brother, Dr. Sanga Dimitri. Thank you very much. And to all distinguished panelists and participants of this great meeting that we are holding. I extend fraternal greetings to each one of you on behalf of my boss, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chair of the African Union Commission. It is a great pleasure for me to be here for the launch of the Global Education Monitoring Report. One thing we need in Africa is data. And when you have data, you can conquer the problems or the challenges that comes with it. And the title of this report, Inclusion and Education, All Means All, points to a question that concerns us all. How do we ensure inclusive and quality education? The Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 4, pledges quality education for all children and youth by 2030. By committing to SDG 4, the world agrees that it is completely unacceptable that millions of children are deprived of an education. Not only is it very disturbing that so many children are out of school, it is also a serious problem that so many of those who are in school are not getting the education they need to master basic skills. And this is very, very important for the transformation of the Africa we want, where we speak of the valued vision of the African Union, where we speak about the integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own competent and skilled citizens able to play in the world arena. And over 70% of our population, our demographic dividend, are the youth of Africa. The commitment therein is based on the principle that no one should be left behind. With a strong focus on inclusion across the whole education spectrum, today's report emphasizes that this should also be the guiding principle of our work. Unfortunately, we see that the poor and most marginalized parents and children are often unable to make their voices heard, to exercise their rights, and to play an active part in society. In addition to the numerous challenges plaguing inclusion in education, you will agree, like Ms. Albright has stated, that COVID-19 has further deepened the problem of exclusion. As you might already be aware, one of the main messages of the report is that indeed, exclusion does not only imply out-of-school children, but includes very many dimensions, such as the inability to enter school, deficiencies in substantial learning experience, exclusion from contributing learning acquired to societal development. I fully agree. It is very important to understand the root causes and efforts at addressing same. Ladies and gentlemen, through the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025, we have domesticated the Global Sustainable Development Goals, but also adapt and make them compatible with our own aspiration, as there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to wants and needs, and we are all in different stages of development. The goals and intents of the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025 are unambiguously ambitious, as they seek to achieve better results than any previous education strategic frameworks, be it regional or international. One of the guiding principles, and perhaps very pertinent to today's launching, is that of the principle on a holistic, inclusive, and equitable education with good conditions for lifelong learning being sine qua non for sustainable development. Since the inception of COVID-19 pandemic, AU member states have taken steps to suppress and control the spread of the coronavirus in Africa, including closing of schools, universities, and training institutions. While closing education institutions are important in mitigating the spread of COVID-19, prolonged closures negatively impact all students, especially those that are deprived and vulnerable. This situation therefore calls for creating opportunities for learning at home for millions of young people whose education have been affected. But how is that feasible in Africa? The AU survey of member states on their education sector response has shown that there are several innovations being implemented across 34 ministries in 23 countries to ensure that education reaches the unreached. This survey revealed that 1. 90 to 100% of learning institutions have been closed down to the COVID-19 pandemic. 2. 88.2% of the respondents declared to have a COVID-19 response plan in place at their ministries of education. 3. 0 to 9% of learning institutions are offering distance learning. 4. 67.6% of respondents are providing distance learning facilities via interaction through WhatsApp, Telegram, or other social messaging applications between students and teachers, and online lessons via government-owned e-learning portals. And 5, 96.2% face internet connectivity as a challenge. The African education sector response, that is the African Union education sector response to COVID-19, is drawn from what we refer to as connecting the dots, the DOTSS framework, where D stands for digital connectivity of schools. Advocate for schools and other learning institutions to be connected to the internet and to become hubs for providing internet access in deprived communities. But this can only be done if African Union member states can bridge the gaps for digital connectivity, and also to promote green energy. Because without these two, remote learning cannot go across the rural areas of Africa. O stands for online learning, providing distance learning content, deploying radio, TV, podcast, and online e-learning. T stands for teachers as facilitators and motivators of learning. The teachers should deploy relevant technologies such as webinars to continue to engage and motivate learners to learn. All ministries should provide guidelines and support to parents for home schooling. S, safety online and offline. This is very, very important. As more children use the internet for learning, they become increasingly vulnerable to online sexual exploitation and abuse. So ministries should provide guidelines and tools for online safety. And S, skills-focused learning. Not certificates for certificate's sake, but certificates that can lead to job acquisition. The curriculum should embrace the 360 degrees approach to skills development, combining foundational, digital, 21st century, entrepreneurial, and job-specific skills. That is the dots of the African Union member state, which we adopted during the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science, and Technology last year as our minimum package for education for the Africa we want. So the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science, and Technology held its virtual extraordinary session on the 30th of April 2020 to address pressing challenges that have been created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Among the key recommendations of ministers was the prioritization of the following areas to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the education sector. The first one is that we must take advantage of the opportunity of online teaching and learning to ensure continuity of education on the continent, improvement of education systems, and robust e-learning infrastructure, ensuring quality and integrating lessons learned and good practices from COVID-19 response as espoused by the DOTSS approach, and conceiving the model roadmap for post-COVID-19, which integrates continuity of education in the different regional and national responses. Secondly, we plan for reopening schools with appropriate strategies to catch up on lost period of learning by identifying time periods for catching up on work, and implement back-to-school campaigns and measures to curb further infections in educational institutions, including schools, universities, and colleges. To this end, ministries of education should work closely with ministries of finance to safeguard the education sector funding, including establishing a contingency fund for education in emergencies. We should document the impact of school closures on children, girls, disabled persons, and vulnerable population, including those living in vulnerable conditions such as refugees, migrants, IDPs, and asylum seekers. Member states should also document good practices and monitor learning engagement with support from local and international partners, and with the view of sharing information with the African Union Commission to facilitate inter-country learning and upscaling of good practices. In implementing the decisions of the ministers, the African Union Commission is embarking on the Continuing Learning Initiative as part of the education and youth sector response to COVID-19, which focuses on 4 key elements, each with several activities carried out since the onset of the pandemic. The first one is a communication campaign to create awareness on opportunities for online learning. We have had joint social media campaigns with HP and Prof Foundation on digital skills courses and open educational resources. Furthermore, we've had a webinar on opportunities for online learning on the 7th of May 2020 as part of a series being organized on COVID-19. Secondly, we should implement joint initiatives with partners to support the provision of online learning in collaboration with HP. Member states are being offered a free of charge learning management system and the technical support in order to provide virtual learning while schools are closed. Then thirdly, policy guidance and dialogue with member states. On 30th of March 2020, a joint AUC UNICEF statement to member states was issued targeting the education sector response. Furthermore, the virtual extraordinary session of the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science and Technology held on April 30, 2020, where the Commission is currently in the process of developing the guidance for reopening of schools. And then fourthly, to facilitate learning through monitoring, documenting, which you've done, and disseminating best practices and lessons. This is where your contribution comes in very hugely. A knowledge and learning platform has been developed to facilitate sharing of experience of member states, development, partner initiatives, and innovation. In all, I think we all agree that it is very germane to build consensus at the national, regional, and continental level on what bottlenecks are holding back drastic reforms and what measures are needed to achieve progress in fostering inclusiveness. Yes, I agree with my sister, Ms. Alice Albright, that COVID-19 has highlighted the deep serration marks of discrimination of many vulnerable children. And I must agree with the ADG that we must deliberate and walk the talk on meaning what we say. Inclusion and education, all means all, without exception, irrespective of class, status, race, gender, and religion. All means all, leaving no one behind. Education, I believe, with other notable Pan-Africanists, should be education without borders. We owe our children this legacy for the transformation of the Africa we want. It will build social equity, integration, and a solid foundation. Let's bridge the digital divide and promote green energy. And we know that definitely education will take its place, and then we'll have the right kind of citizen. Finally, I would like to congratulate you on the report and for the important work you are doing to ensure inclusiveness in education. I thank you very much for your kind attention and for indulging me to speak for this length. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Professor Sarah, my sister. As you can see, she's passionate about education. And then let me reassure you that UNESCO, through its network of regional offices, Category 1 Institute, National Commission, will work hand in hand with you, because on this continent, we cannot talk about reaching SDG 4 without talking about CESA. So we need to work hand in hand so that we can move together to prepare the youthful population that we have on this continent to contribute to the Africa that we want. Thank you very much for being with us.